Our next speaker is Bas Boorsma. He's director of Cisco's Think and Act tank. Bas has been responsible for the future of work thinking within his group. Smart Work Centers has been one of the concepts coming out of this team, and he would like to talk to you about that. And the things he would like to you to take along is that smart work will actually mean something for organizations and communities. So Bas Boorsma.
Just a starting question. Who actually knows Cisco? Can I see fingers? Oh, that's good. We're not a small network company, that's for sure. To get us started on a journey of the future of work, I would like to start out in the past, as so many stories that end up in the future begin. Actually, the year that I would like to start in is 1963. This is a very old slide that comes from that particular year, and it was created by a man called Paul Barron. Paul Barron was a professor. I think he died 1 or 2 years ago, in fact. And he was employed by the Rand Corporation in the United States. And his job was to figure out, on behalf of the Pentagon, a communications infrastructure that would allow the United States with the capability of counter-launching a nuclear strike against the Soviet Union in case the Soviet Union would strike first. And the basic issue that American defense was facing was the following. If you have a centralized infrastructure, communications infrastructure, and right at the heart you have the Pentagon, and you put one bomb in there, it's game over. And you can't respond. So the issue that they're trying to address is, how do we create a resilient infrastructure that will allow us to continue to have a credible counter-launch capability? So they came up with different models. Decentralized, worked halfway, but not entirely, until they came up with a highly resilient infrastructure, which was a distributed infrastructure, right at the right here of this diagram. What it would allow you to do is to take one bit of information to any other point through a grid, take out one part of the grid, and the rest of the grid continues to operate. This particular infrastructure was so powerful that the Minister of Foreign Affairs or head of the State Department of the United States, I think it was Robert McNamara at the time, took it to Moscow and said, guys, don't even try. We have such a resilient infrastructure, we will counter-launch. But the great thing of this rather dark episode of human history is that this ended up being one of the parents of the internet. In fact, that diagram, that distributed diagram to the right, is the internet. There are many parents. Al Gore claims to be one of the fathers of the internet. There are many, many, many fathers and mothers of the internet, but this is certainly one. The question that we asked ourselves as a company, especially over the last 10 years, is if this particular infrastructure is so resilient, if this particular way of designing things is so resilient, what would happen if you apply this to other areas, other spaces of human endeavor, human activity? This has been particularly relevant in the urban space, which we as a company have tried to address over the past 7 years or so. We're getting more crowded in our cities. We're urbanizing. We're having an economic crisis. We're having a mobility crisis in many of our urban centers. We're having an energy crisis. We're having a greening crisis. So you can see there's a perfect storm within our cities. And one of the questions we asked is, what if you bring this resilient infrastructure into almost anything relevant in the urban space? And that doesn't only apply to infrastructures, but to buildings, to mobility thinking, business models, the design of cities, right up to behavior itself. That certainly goes for work. Take this picture. To the left, we have people. Let's say that they live somewhere in the Sahara, close to it. They need to get out of their homes every day to a water well to fetch their water, to do their cooking, to do their laundering, to have their drinking water, and so on. They do that every day. They go out and come back. That's what we still do with work. We're still stuck in that traffic jam. Many of us are. But with water, we no longer do that. With water, we distribute it. We distribute it to our homes, our offices, our schools, wherever we need it. The question really is, less from a technology perspective, but really from a cultural and psychological perspective, why don't we do that with information and with work? Because we can. Technology is, as has been pointed out by the previous speaker, is the easy part. It's there. We can make it happen. But location, and the way we think about location of work, is only one element in this big transformation. The big transformation that we now see is the big departure from the silos of the industrial age. If you look at the old way of working, the old episodes that belong to the former part of what came before the paradigm shift, if you will, is this whole bunch of silos that we have been stuck in and that we continue to be stuck in to quite an extent, quite a big deal. So buildings has been pointed out. We're part of that big building. That's us. We work from that building, not that other building. But we're also we used to be part of a fixed group of peers called our colleagues. We get our paycheck at roughly the same time of the month, or all at the same time of the month. We know exactly where we stand in that hierarchy. And if we're very lucky within that old structure, our bosses will allow us to telework for 1 or 2 or 3 hours per week. That very word, telework, and other words like those, satellite offices, telework, distant working, remote working, all sort of betray that old thinking, centralized thinking, distributed, remote, away from the central office that continues to be king. Applications and data that is stuck in these little PCs. We need to get to those computers in order to access our data. And stuck in hours, 9 to 5 or 8 to 6. Those are the silos that we have been stuck in. And the very central organizing principle in all of this has been control, radical control. These are the things we have inherited from the very beginnings of the industrial age. But this is changing. Much of that is changing. We're converging space, time in a way that is unprecedented. We have now the ability to work truly wherever we are, whenever we are. We collaborate more, and we collaborate with an ever larger group of people. The peers that we work with are no longer just our colleagues. We can work much more result-oriented, work truly smart, not just telework, but work truly smart, distributed, and we blend work with private life. Question, who is actually using this in the evening hours? Can I see fingers? Everybody. Next question. Who is accessing these phones, checking the email before having your teeth brushed? That's a big majority again. And I don't know whether that's good, but it's here. It's happening. What it requires us to do possibly is to think of a new culture of unwritten rules as to what is acceptable and not. But the point is, it's changing. And that change is not just an ordinary change. If you look at the various phases of that big transformation at hand here, you can see how this has come in very particular distinct steps, how that transformation is still ongoing. In fact, we're probably just in the middle of it all. And how technology has always been one of the main drivers in each and every part of that transformation. So if you look at the old industrial era way of working. We've gone through those, right? Radical control, location-centric, asset-centric, very centralized way of working. When we started to introduce a first degree of ICT, the first PCs followed by internet, email, and that allowed for some change. And that change had a very distinct face. What it looked like is what you could call a mere optimization of old ways of working. We tried to become more efficient at our way of working, but the rudimentary ways of working remained unchanged. As technology progressed and as more technology came in there, like broadband connections to our home, we were able for the first time to introduce new patterns, new modes of working that simply did not exist before. Ever since the late 90s, we have known something called telework. And that's that first brave new step that allows for a new mode of working. But we've come a long way since those first steps on telework. We collaborate more through collaboration tools. Today we have high-end video such as telepresence, which allow us to have face-to-face meetings without us really still thinking of the very fact that we're dealing with technology. It's seamless. It's working. Finally, made good and made true on the promise. We have peer-to-peer and wiki ways of working, wiki type of tools, social media, and ever since, well, the past several years, especially in the Netherlands, we have seen a whole lot of smart work center type of environment, third workspaces. Home is a good place to work from. However, I've got 3 boys at home myself, and it's not always a great place to work. It can be intensely noisy, and a third place to work from, a high-end professional workplace to work from. We're hearing from Regis, we're hearing from Spaces today. Great examples of places where you can actually work from in a professional way. These things have become more normal, and they are continuing to become more normal for a whole large array of organizations. Smart work, in many ways, right to the right of this diagram, is the end game, the theoretical end game, where work is truly, utterly time and place independent, powered by cloud. So why should we do all this? Why is this so important? Do we really want to go this way? Well, first of all, this paradigm shift is here. One of the crucial hallmarks of a paradigm shift is that there are 2 sides of the debate that have a distinct different worldview, and those worldviews collide. There are those that will say, this is never going to happen, and we're going to be stuck, we're going to be within that old work environment for a very long time to come. And then there are the believers that they're on the other side of the paradigm shift. That's typical for every paradigm shift. But it's not just about religion or believing something. This is about costs and operational excellence. This is about how you can actually become more competitive in many ways. Great example that I take from Regis. One of the Regis customers, Yell in the UK, used to have 42 offices there. They're down from 42 to 2. You still need an old office. It's good to have an office, host to your culture of your organization. However, you need less than 42 probably like that company. And all that stuff is now working from Regis type of environments. That saves a whole lot of money. The city of Amsterdam is another great example. The city of Amsterdam has been a partner of Cisco in creating a network of smart work environments. And the city of Amsterdam said, this is actually quite interesting. The very fact that we now have this smart work environment in and around the city allows our employees to potentially work from there. So the city of Amsterdam set about creating a smart work strategy for their employees, allowing their employees to work from home, from smart work environments, and from renovated offices. This has meant a reduction from 1.3 desk per employee to 0.7 desk per employee, from 200 municipal buildings that the city used for their employees down to 120 buildings for the entire city. So that is an amazing number, and that's an amazing reduction in cost that that allows for. But I'd also say that this is important. It's important to embrace that paradigm shift, to embrace a smart work strategy is truly important to attract next generation workers. We're going to hear much more about change management, change of culture, change of psychology. But for that younger generation, you don't need to convince them. These work from their iPad every day. They play, they learn, they work from their iPads. To ask these people to come into a traditional office, to sit down in a cubicle and to log into a dinosaur PC is not exactly very attractive. So it really comes down to where you want to stand in terms of that paradigm shift, on what side of that paradigm shift you want to stand. And I hope that this day will allow you to position that for yourself. Thank you very much.